Happy holiday everyone. I wanted to do something a little bit different for the holiday season for this channel, but I'd like to introduce you today to the Christmas Iceberg. This iceberg was created by username FracZTomatoes. If you don't know, an iceberg is a chart that is widespread throughout the internet to test someone's knowledge on a certain subject. The top layers of the iceberg are well known of a certain subject, in our case Christmas, with the topics getting more obscure the deeper we go down into the depths of the iceberg. Without saying more, let's get into it. Santa Claus. To no surprise, the first entry on this iceberg is the jolly man in red himself, Santa Claus. The legend goes that every Christmas Eve, Santa flies around the world with his 8 reindeer to deliver toys to the children who stayed off the naughty list. He sneaks down the chimney to leave presents and eat the cookies you leave out, but if you make the naughty list, he leaves you heaps of coal in your stocking. I grew up hearing about this tale when I was a little kid, although I never really believed in Santa Claus myself. I always thought to myself that it would be unfeasible for a man to travel around the world in one night. Maybe I was too smart for my age. When did you guys stop believing in Santa Claus? Now, the legend of Santa Claus can be traced back to the 3rd century to St. Nicholas, but we will get to that later down in the iceberg. The Christmas tree. My family would get together around the beginning of December while I was growing up to put up the Christmas tree. I'm pretty sure that most of you will have a very similar shared experience growing up. I did not realize that the Christmas tree has its roots back to the Renaissance era, in early Germany when Protestant Germans brought decorated trees into their homes. The famous Protestant leader, Martin Luther, is said to have been the first person to decorate an evergreen tree with candles, which would be the beginning tradition of decorating a Christmas tree with lights. The Catholic Church resisted this tradition for the longest time, until 1982, when they first stood a Christmas tree in the Vatican City. December 25th. This day is obviously the day that modern Christians celebrate Christmas. Many different cultures, of course, have different days to celebrate Christmas, but this day is the day that nearly 50% of the world's population celebrates Christmas. It wasn't always this way though. In fact, the date of December 25th didn't correlate with the birth of Christ until the 4th century, when church officials were trying to correlate Christ's birth with the already celebrated pagan festivals on the 21st of December that honored different Roman gods. This leads to the very possibility that Jesus was not born on the 25th. In fact, certain facts of the nativity scene, like the presence of shepherds, seem to point out the fact that he was born in spring. Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is of course the day before Christmas. Many people have a tradition of opening up one gift on this day. My family did as well, and I remember receiving a lot of pajamas on the day before Christmas. While many families in the United States share the tradition of leaving cookies out for Santa, many different cultures around the world hold the tradition of feasting into the early hours of Christmas morning. What was your family's tradition on Christmas Eve? Did you ever try to stay up to see Santa Claus on the night of Christmas Eve? Snow. It's snow. It's cold and fluffy, and there is tons of it where I'm from during the wintertime, especially right now during a blizzard. Snow became almost an integrated part of Christmas because it takes place in winter. However, many people around the world do not have the pleasure of celebrating a white Christmas, as the climate in the location is too warm for snow. Sometimes I wish I was in one of those warmer climates, but I do love doing outdoor activities in the snow, such as skiing, snowshoeing, and ice fishing. Christmas songs. As much as I love Christmas songs, I feel that they should not start playing until December. It seems like most grocery stores and places start playing holiday songs almost in October. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Why are you angry about it?
It's crazy!
It's crazy!
We all have our favorite Christmas songs though, whether they are sung by classic singers of the days past such as Bing Crosby or Frank Sinatra, or by modern singers of today such as Mariah Carey or Michael Bublé. One of my favorite artists to listen to during the holiday season is Pentatonics. I love the acapella type music and they just sound so awesome. I just found out about a fun tradition this year. It's called Whamageddon. It's a fun game to see how long you can last in December without hearing the song Last Christmas by Wham. How long did you last this year? I didn't even make it into the first day since some of my coworkers are playing this at work. Thank you, coworkers. Christmas movies. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Holiday Inn, White Christmas, Polar Express, with the creepy animations, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Elf, The Grinch, The Santa Claus, Home Alone, Die Hard, and Iron Man 3. They are all classic Christmas movies. There are so many more that I cannot name. A very important debate on the internet centers around what constitutes a Christmas movie. Could it be considered a Christmas movie if it just takes place around Christmas time? Or does the theme have to revolve around the holidays?
The Nativity. The Nativity scene is a special exhibition that features the birth of Christ. Most of the nativity scenes feature Joseph and Mary, the parents of Jesus, gathered in a stable surrounded by farm animals, shepherds, and wise men. Some even include an angel watching over them. Many people like to point out the inconsistency that the wise men would not be at the stable when Christ was born, because they would not have seen Jesus up until 2 years after his birth. However inconsistent it is to have the wise men at the nativity scene, they are almost now integrated into the set, and it almost looks empty without their presence.
Snowmen. During wintertime, many people go outside and make snowmen. My wife and I do it all the time. A very proper snowman includes branches for arms and hands, buttons for eyes and mouth, a hat, and a carrot for a nose. Fun fact, did you know that the tallest snowman ever built measured 122 feet? It was built in Bethel, Maine, to honor Maine Senator Olympia Snow. It was so large that skis were used for its eyelashes, and wreaths were used for its eyes. The North Pole. The North Pole is where Santa allegedly lives, but I've always wondered how the North Pole became part of the Christmas story for Santa Claus. Clement Clark Moore, in The Night Before Christmas, wrote that reindeer were Santa's main transportation. This began to create the belief that Santa resided in the North Pole, because that is where reindeer were from. To concrete this belief even more, Thomas Nast, an American cartoonist, featured a cartoon of Santa Claus residing in a village called Santa Clausville, North Pole. This was not done by accident, as there were several expeditions to the North Pole that would make the highlights in the news. There was almost a mythicality surrounding the North Pole, as no one would see the North Pole until Robert Perry in 1909.
Gingerbread. Ginger has been cultivated in Asia for centuries and slowly made its way to Europe in the 15th century. Being a hardy crop, ginger can keep for a long time, even until December. Long before the rise of electricity, fresh ginger was easily obtainable. Some historians claim that Queen Elizabeth I decorated gingerbread men in the likeness of members of the court. This would explain the gingerbread men, but how about the gingerbread houses? Well, this would take a darker turn, as the gingerbread houses have the roots in the Brothers Grimm's story of Hansel and Gretel, where the kids stumble upon a house made of candy and treats. The witch tries to fatten the two and attempts to eat them before Hansel pushes the witch into her oven and kills her. So the next time you create a gingerbread house, think of the heroism of Hansel.
Hot chocolate. This one is pretty simple. I mean, it's hot chocolate. It's super good and tasty. I'm sure everyone listening has tried hot chocolate before. Well, at least I hope so.
Frosty the Snowman. Thumpity thump thump. Frosty the Snowman, the iconic snowball that came to life, first aired on television on December 7th, 1969. The special is based on the Walter E. Rollins and Steve Nelson song of the same name. The show featured Jimmy Durante, Bill DeWolf, and Jackie Vernon. The show was a great success and aired on CBS every year since.
Christmas dinner. Many families gather on Christmas Day to celebrate with a dinner. Most dinners feature ham as a main course. However, one time my family did not do ham when I was young, and we had turkey instead. This distraught me so much, and I tried to teach my mom that turkey belongs on Thanksgiving and ham belongs on Christmas. So, I want to agree with my mom and say that turkey and ham are interchangeable. And you would agree with me too, because you wouldn't want to disappoint my mom, would you?
Rudolph. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer had a very shiny nose. He first appeared in 1939 when Robert L. May created Rudolph as an assignment for Chicago-based Montgomery Ward. The company had been selling coloring books every year for Christmas, and it was decided that in 1939 that creating their own coloring book would save them money. After creating the concept for the Red-Nosed Reindeer, May considered the names Rollo and Reginald before deciding to settle on Rudolph. In his office one day, May was thinking about how to create a cartoon featuring a reindeer. Looking out into a thick fog that was coming out of Lake Michigan and encompassing the entire city, May thought of a great idea. Suddenly, I had it! A nose! A bright red nose that would shine through the fog like a spotlight. The idea was initially rejected because the idea of a red nose was closely linked to alcoholism, but May talked management into the idea.
Santa knows physics. Of all the colors, red lights penetrate fog best. That's why Benny the blue-nosed reindeer would never got the gig.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a Jewish festival that commemorates the rebuilding of Jerusalem in the Second Temple in the 2nd century BC. It is observed for 8 days, usually beginning at the end of November or early December. It all began with Antiochus invaded Jerusalem and tried to force the Jews to worship the Greek gods. He invaded Jerusalem and destroyed the temple and many objects inside. A group called the Maccabees fought against the king and won and pushed him away from the temple. When the Maccabees went inside the temple, the menorah was still intact, but only had enough oil to burn for 1 day. They lit it anyways, and instead of lasting for only 1 day, the menorah stayed lit for 8 whole days. They saw this as a miracle, and this is the reason why Hanukkah lasts for 8 days. Candy canes. We all know what candy canes are. They are the crook-shaped candy sticks that we place on the Christmas tree. They can come in many different colors and flavors. My favorite used to be the Skittles flavored candy canes. What were yours? I know this is a very brief entry on candy canes, but there is another entry on candy canes where we will discuss the topic a little bit more in depth. So please stay tuned. Carols. The best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear. I don't know about you guys, but when I hear carolers singing in public, it does get me into Christmas mood. I used to sing in a choir at my church and would go around the town to different homes and sing for the family. It would always bring a smile to their face and would make some people to even tear up. So maybe caroling just has a special place in my heart.
Holly. Many Christians have adopted the holly tree as a symbol of Christmas. The leaves are said to symbolize the crown of thorns that Jesus wore, and the berries stood for his blood, while the green of the leaves stood for eternal life. While Christians use it to represent Jesus, the Romans of yesteryear used the holly plant to honor their god of agriculture, Saturn, around the time of winter solstice. They would weave holly branches into wreaths and give them as gifts to other people. The integration of symbolism into Christianity happened when Christianity became increasingly popular in Roman culture, and people were not willing to give up their holly traditions.
Stockings. Why do people hang stockings out for Santa for stuff? One of the possible theories is that there was a father with 3 daughters that were struggling to make ends meet. St. Nicholas, who was the basis for Santa Claus, heard about this and snuck into the family's home and left gifts in girls' stockings that were hung over the fireplace to dry. I don't know how true this is, but stocking stuffers did originate somehow. They started to appear during the Christmas season around Europe, and by the time the tradition reached North America, custom stockings created specifically for the holiday season were in style. Mistletoe. As you probably have found out, a lot of the traditions we have for Christmas have originated from different cultures and mythologies from around the world. The mistletoe is no different. The tradition of kissing under the mistletoe has its roots in ancient Greece during the festival of Saturnalia, the festival that is dedicated to their god Saturn. It was later even adopted into some traditions of marriage, as the white seeds of the mistletoe were said to represent a certain male body fluid. Now, it is just a tradition to kiss your loved ones underneath the mistletoe.
Advent. Advent is the preparation for the Nativity and the expected second coming of Christ. The 4 weeks leading up to Christmas are used by Christians to partake in this tradition to prepare themselves to commemorate the birth of Christ. It is thought that the tradition of Advent has its roots dating back to the 6th century when monks were ordered to fast in preparation for Christmas. Some people use calendars, which are used daily, and others use candles, which are used weekly on every Sunday, to count down to Christmas. Does your family or anyone you know partake in Advent? If so, please let me know in the comments below.
Father Christmas. Although many people think that Father Christmas and Santa Claus are the same, that is simply not the case. Father Christmas is a personification of Christmas, while Santa Claus was an actual literal person. Father Christmas was a symbol for the Christmas season, more often than not taking the shape of a merry old man at a party. In Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, the spirit of Christmas present is that of Father Christmas. In the novel's first edition, the picture associated with the ghost of Christmas present is reminiscent of a Victorian depiction of Father Christmas. In A Christmas Carol, this ghost was my favorite ghost, as he was the holliest and jolliest of fellows. I think that everyone would agree with this. The song that accompanied this ghost on the Muppets' Christmas Carol was a certified banger. Eggnog. Eggnog is a festive drink that is commonly served around Christmas time. It is made with milk, cream, sugar, egg yolk, and whipped egg whites. Most often than not, alcoholic beverages are added to eggnog to make it taste so much better. I've never personally been a huge fan of eggnog, but I haven't had it in a few years and would be down to try it again. When I was doing the research for this iceberg, I found some recipes for eggnog that looked very simple. Maybe I'll try some in the near future. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. More commonly known as The Night Before Christmas, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas is a poem published by Clement Clark Moore in 1823. It is probably the most famous poem ever written by an American. The poem itself shaped the public's conception of how Santa Claus appeared. The story goes like this. On Christmas Eve, a family goes to bed to rest for Christmas Day when the father was awakened by some noise in the yard. He looked out the window to see Santa Claus in his sleigh pulled by 8 reindeer. After Santa landed on the roof, he came into the house by the chimney, laid out presents underneath the Christmas tree, and stuffed the stockings hung above the fireplace full of treats. The father talked to Santa for a moment before Santa leaves. Before he leaves, the jolly man turned around and exclaims, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all, a good night." Jingle Bells. This is probably one of the more famous Christmas carols. It is said that the song was written originally to be sung by a church choir by Thanksgiving, and no one knows how it morphed into being a Christmas song. I guess that bells are more associated with Christmas than Thanksgiving, so people just naturally thought it was referring to Christmas. Nutcracker. Nutcrackers are very popular in Germany and were a part of the decorations for the dinner table. They were used to bring up a conversation as people moved into the final course of the meal. There are many different unique types of nutcrackers used to crack open hazelnuts and almonds. The nutcrackers would usually be a conversation starter, as they were created to resemble birds and other animals. It wasn't until the 1600s that they were created to bear the resemblance of kings and guards. The nutcrackers weren't popular until the 1800s, when Tchaikovsky released a ballet, The Nutcracker Suite, in 1892. From there, they spread quickly to different parts of the world, and were soon integrated into Christmas traditions. Saint Nick. Saint Nick is short for Saint Nicholas of Myra, the basis for Santa Claus. He is a patron saint of merchants, sailors, children, brewers, and unmarried people. His habits of giving gifts in secret are the basis for our Santa Claus today. There's very little of anything about his personal life that is known, and he is shrouded in a lot of mystery, which gave rise to a lot of legends that surround his character today. You can see that throughout this iceberg, most references to Santa Claus lead back to Saint Nicholas. For instance, many of the good deeds that are attributed to Santa Claus have their origins dating back to Saint Nicholas. A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol is one of the more famous books about Christmas. The book recounts the tale of Ebenezer Scrooge being visited by three ghosts of Christmas, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. He started out the story as a grumpy, greedy old man, but ended up being transformed by the visitation of the three ghosts. There's been several different adaptations of the story into a film, but my favorite is the Muppets Christmas Carol. Actually, it is one of my top favorite Christmas movies. If you have never seen it, I would highly recommend watching it for this holiday season. Mrs. Claus. There are many different stories of how Santa got his wife. Some say that he was delivering presents one day and met a beautiful lady and immediately fell in love, while other stories recount that Santa met his wife early on in his life when he was a regular toy maker. All the different tales of Mrs. Claus has resulted in many different names being given to her, such as Jessica, Merry Christmas, Gertrude, and Carol. To most legends, Mrs. Claus is well known for making cookies with the elves, watching over the reindeer, and creating toys with Santa Claus. Xmas. Xmas is a very common abbreviation for Christmas. I've seen this used so many times, but never really stopped and wondered how weird it really is that an X is used to abbreviate Christ, which has no X. How did this originate exactly? When I was growing up, I was taught that the X was used in the attempts of non-religious people to decentralize the Christmas holiday with Christianity. But when I was doing research for this video, I found out that quite the opposite is true. The X comes from the Greek letter chi, which is the first letter of the Greek word for Christmas. There's much evidence that the abbreviation derived from the Christian church itself, as it was easier to use the X while transcribing documents. Milk and cookies. According to the legend of Santa Claus, you are supposed to leave milk and cookies out on the night of Christmas Eve as a snack for Santa Claus. My family never did this when I was growing up. Did yours? Christmas pudding. Christmas pudding has its roots in medieval Europe, when it was made from breadcrumbs, dried fruit, and other ingredients. Legend has it that the pudding became associated with Christmas after a decree said that the pudding should be made on the 25th of Sunday after Trinity, that it be prepared with 13 ingredients to represent Christ and the 12 apostles, and that every family member stirs it in turn from east to west to honor the Magi and their journey in that direction. Slowly through time, the tradition of eating Christmas pudding spread to different countries throughout medieval Europe and continues to be a part of many people's traditions to this day. I've personally never tried Christmas pudding, and it has always been a little gross to me. Have you ever tried it? If so, what do you think of it? The 12 Days of Christmas. The 12 Days of Christmas is an English Christmas carol and is a perfect example of a cumulative song, as the line of the first verse becomes part of the second verse. It is probably one of the most well-known Christmas songs. My personal favorite adaptation of the song is by the Muppets, and I will include the link to the video in the description below. Mince pies. Mince pies are another dish that has its origins dating back to medieval England. The mince pie's ingredients can have their recipes traced back to the Crusades, when the Crusaders brought back the pies that were said to resemble the gifts that the Magi gave the Christ child. Later, in the 17th century, mince pies made their way to New England. The Puritans did not celebrate Christmas, so they moved the traditions of consuming pies to Thanksgiving, a holiday that they did celebrate. Kris Kringle. Kris Kringle is said to be Santa Claus's actual name. There's not much more to say about this, but a really cool fact that I found out was that Kris Kringle comes from the German Christkind. Christ meaning Christ, and kind meaning child. Noel. Noel comes from the Latin verb nasci, meaning to be born, and is more commonly used to describe Christmas carols. I know that I'm making a lot of these brief and to the point, but I really want to get to the more interesting topics on this iceberg. So let's move on. Feliz Navidad. José Feliciano sang the now very famous song Feliz Navidad in 1970. Feliciano said that he recorded the song while feeling homesick while he sat in his studio in Los Angeles. He remembered the times caroling with his brothers and celebrated the Christmas season. He wanted to express how much he appreciated the Christmas season and wrote the song dedicated to it. Christmas crackers. Christmas crackers are a festive decoration that makes a snapping sound when pulled open. Usually they have either candy or a small trinket inside. The Christmas cracker was first invented in 1847 by Tom Smith of London. He created the crackers as a type of wrappers to conceal his bonbon treats. He thought of the idea of adding a popping mechanism after he listened to the peaceful sound of wood crackling in a fire. Eventually, through time, trinkets replaced the snacks inside. Season's Greetings. Season's Greetings is a popular way to wish someone a good time around the holidays. Since there are several different holidays in late November and December, it is more inclusive to say Season's Greetings rather than Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah. The apostrophe makes the phrase mean Seasons of Greetings. Coca-Cola's relation to Santa's red suit. In 1931, Coca-Cola hired Swedish-American artist Haddon Sundblom to create art of Santa Claus for the business's advertisement during the holiday season. This is taken from Coca-Cola's Australia official website. I will link the article in the description below. Santa has been portrayed in a variety of ways throughout history. Tall and gaunt, short and elfin, distinguished and intellectual, even downright frightening. Sundblom's paintings for Coca-Cola established Santa as a warm, happy character with human features, such as rosy cheeks, a white beard, twinkling eyes, and laughter lines. This grandfather-style Coca-Cola Santa captivated the public, and as their advent spread globally, the perception of the North Pole's most famous resident changed forever. White Elephant. My work plays this game every year for the Christmas party. Everyone brings a gift to put underneath the Christmas tree. One person at a time gets to get up to the Christmas tree and gets to choose to either steal a present someone else picked or pick a new gift underneath the tree. I kept reading different rules for the game online, but this is generally how I've been accustomed to play it. Hide the Pickle. Hide the Pickle is one of the rare traditions of Christmas that families have. An ornament in the shape of a pickle is hidden in the Christmas tree, and the first person to find it is awarded a prize. The origins of the Christmas pickle probably date back to a marketing campaign created by a German Christmas ornament company in the 1890s that was created to sell more ornaments. Other possible origin stories range from an American Civil War POW being given a pickle by a guard to save him from starvation, to St. Nicholas saving two boys who were stuck in a pickle barrel. One other fact, Berrien Springs, a small community located in the state of Michigan, claimed itself as the Christmas pickle capital of the world. Maybe someday I'll go here for a visit. The 25th chosen for Saturnalia. As we went through this iceberg, there's been several references to Saturnalia because Saturnalia and Christmas share the same date of celebration. This is due to the fact that early biblical scholars chose December 25th to align with the celebration of the pagan holiday. I've talked about this a little more in detail earlier on the iceberg, so let's move on. Charles W. Howard. Charles W. Howard was world famous for playing Santa Claus in department stores and parades. His holiday cheer and happiness were said to have spread to everyone whom he met. He founded the Charles W. Howard Santa Claus School in 1937. From 1948, he was a featured Santa Claus in Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Sadly, he passed away at his home on May 1st, 1966. The Santa Claus School was moved to Midland, Michigan, which is where it's still running in operation to this day. Japan KFC. In 1970, the manager of the first KFC in Japan began promoting fried chicken as a substitution for turkey on Christmas. He marketed the chicken as party barrels for Christmas. As Japanese KFC expanded, the marketing campaign ran Kentucky for Christmas to sell more chicken on Christmas. It soon became a widely practiced custom in Japan. If you, the listener, live in Japan, do you get KFC on Christmas? Christie's Messe. The English word Christmas comes from the Latin phrase Christis Missae, which translates to Christ Mass. That pretty much sums up this entry. Let's move on. And I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Jack Frost. Jack Frost is known as a trickster teenage boy who creates snow and ice around wintertime. He is a personification of wintry weather and a variant of Old Man Winter. He is said to be the culprit behind the frost and winters on cold nights. The legend of Jack Frost can be traced back to an ancient Norse frost giant, Jarkol Frosti, who was a Nordic personification of ice and snow. He would cause blizzards throughout northern Europe and would only be pleased by reindeer sacrifices. Personally, I like the legend of Jack Frost more than the Nordic version. How about you? Krampus. Krampus is described as being half goat and half beast, resembling a humanoid figure. Krampus is often depicted as a man, and other times a woman, with devil-like horns, sharp pointy teeth, and a long devilish tongue. Krampus's tale originated in 12th century Germany, coming from the German word Krampen, meaning claw in English. And although Santa is based on Christianity, his counterpart comes from pagan ideology, created in part with the coming of the winter solstice, occurring on the 21st of December, the start of the Yuletide season. Jingle Bells in Space. Jingle Bells was the first song that was played in space when it was broadcasted on NASA's Gemini 6A spaceflight on December 16, 1965. The astronauts aboard the Gemini 6, Tom Stafford and Wally Schirra, decided to play a prank on Mission Control and play Jingle Bells to them over the radio. It's so funny that people in the highest rank can still play jokes on one another. Reginald the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I'm not going to stay on this point for long since I already discussed this in the entry of Rudolph, but there was a slight possibility that Rudolph's name could have been Reginald. Maybe, in a parallel universe, it really is. Christogeneticophobia. This is the fear of Christmas. Many people have had bad memories when they were younger that was associated with Christmas time. This could cause a fear of the holiday season. It is a branch of herotophobia, which is the fear of celebrating events. I'm not sure of the statistics, but a good number of cases of the fear of Christmas come from abusive drunk parents who would instill fear into their children around Christmas time when drinking was more prevalent. This would leave a sense of fear and dread that would grow into a fear of the holiday season. Candy canes red for Jesus' blood. This entry is referring to the commonly held belief that the red stripes on the candy canes were created to stand for Jesus' blood to remind Christians of his sacrifice. The legend goes that a candy maker in Indiana wanted to make a candy that reminded children of the sacrifice that Jesus made. He started with a pure white hard candy stick to represent the virgin birth. He then stained it with red stripes to stand for Christ's blood. I'm not really sure how factual the story is, but I do know that candy canes existed a long time before Indiana. So, maybe this legend isn't quite true after all. Befana. The Italian legend of Befana is very similar to Santa Claus, in that she flies around the country and delivers presents to good children on the night of Epiphany Eve. She is depicted as a woman in old clothes and covered in soot, since she climbs down the chimneys to deliver presents and flies around the sky on a broomstick. If you see her, you will receive a thump on your shoulder from her broomstick because she wishes not to be seen. A commonly held belief is that she was pregnant around the time of Jesus' birth, but her child sadly passed away. She heard about the miraculous birth of Christ, so she prepared some gifts and set out to see him. When she finally arrived, the Christ child was happy with the gifts and gave her a gift of her own, that she would be the mother of every child in Italy. Belsnickel. Belsnickel is a German gift giver who goes around Germany on the day of Christmas to deliver gifts and toys to good children. He's nearly the opposite of Krampus. He is described as a man wearing furs and has a long tongue. He carries around a sack full of goods and a switch, a type of whip, to beat naughty children. The legend of Belsnickel did spread wherever German immigrants settled, and is now preserved in parts of Pennsylvania, Brazil, Newfoundland, and Nova Scotia. The Tia de Nadal. The Tia de Nadal, the Christmas log, became popular in the 17th and 18th centuries in Catalonia. Starting on the Feast of Immaculate Conception on December 8th, children would give the Tia de Nadal some food and cover it with a blanket so it will not get cold. They were told that if they took care of the Christmas log, it would poop out presents on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Eve, the log is placed partly in the fireplace and demanded to poop out presents. Since many houses do not have fireplaces, Another tradition is to put the teal in the middle of a group of people and beat it with sticks until it poops. This sounds like a very fun tradition. Krampusnacht. Krampusnacht is a festival that celebrates the tradition of Krampus, where people dress up as the devil Krampus and chase kids through the streets. It occurs on the night of December 5th and is celebrated through Germany. Zwarte Piet. I'm going to skip this entry. Look it up if you want to. I'm not going to talk about it. The Merry Lude. The Merry Lude is a tradition in South Wales where a horse's skull is decorated with beads and other decorations and mounted on top of a man covered with white cloth. A very well-dressed man takes the Merry Lude to different homes where they participate in wassailing. The homeowner will turn down the group of wassailers out of tradition and they will discourse back and forth through song. If the homeowner allows the group in, the horse will cause havoc in the home, neighing and scaring the children away. Frau Perchta, the Christmas witch. Perchta was once known as a goddess in Alpine paganism in the Upper German and Austrian regions of the Alps, but now is known commonly as the Christmas witch. She has two forms. She may appear as a beautiful young lady or as an ugly, haggard woman, who is probably the part where the witch legend comes from. She is described as having 1 foot larger than the other, which symbolizes that she is a higher being that can shapeshift into animals. She became popular around Christmas time, as it was a common folklore that she would leave a silver coin underneath the bed of the kids who behaved well, but she would slit the bellies open of the children who were naughty, take their stomachs and guts out, and stuff them with straw. So you better be nice, or you'll probably become a scarecrow by New Year's Eve. Danny, the South African ghost boy. Legend goes that a boy named Danny in South Africa left a plate of cookies out for Santa on Christmas Eve. Later that night, he was hungry, so he snuck downstairs for the cookies. When his grandmother caught him stealing the cookies, she beat him to death. It is said to this day that Danny haunts the homes of naughty boys and girls. So, if you leave those cookies out, you better not eat them. Grilla and the Yule Cat. Grilla is an Icelandic giant who begs people for the disobedient children. People can make her run away by giving her food. She lives in a remote cave on top of a mountain with her giant cat, the Yule Cat. Every Christmas Eve, she travels down the mountain to the villages to kidnap naughty children to eat them. The Yule Cat finds its prey by scouring the mountains for anyone who has not received new clothes by the time of Christmas. If you had not gotten any new clothes or were ill-prepared for the weather, the giant Yule Cat will eat you. Hans Trapp, the Christmas Scarecrow. France is full of different legendary figures for Christmas time. A lot of them are benevolent beings, but there are a few who are boogeymen and evil. This is where Hans Trapp, the Christmas cannibalistic scarecrow, steps in. The legend goes that Hans Trapp was a knight in the 1400s and became obsessed with fame and power. He stole money from poor people and started to build power and wealth for himself. The Pope found out about this wrongdoing, so they excommunicated him. He was stripped from his wealth and titles and banished from the land. Feeling desperate and empty, Hans made a deal with the devil to gain more power, and this deal gave him a taste for human flesh. One day, he disguises himself as a scarecrow to ambush people as they walk by. As a young boy walked by, Hans grabbed him and brought him to his lair, where he began to feast on the boy. All of a sudden, a lightning bolt struck him, and he died. However, to this day, his spirit is said to haunt the fields of France, preying upon naughty boys and girls around Christmas time. The Kalikantzari Trolls. The Kalikantzari Trolls come to Earth every Christmas and stay for 12 days until January 6th and would wreak havoc and cause mayhem everywhere they could. They are basically the complete opposite of the elves that accompanied Santa at the North Pole. Instead of being happy and joyful, these trolls were evil and extremely happy to terrify children and adults alike. Throughout those 12 days, you would have to cover everything in the kitchen with a lid, as it was one of their favorite pranks to grab sugar, flour, or pepper and scatter it throughout the house. Although they feasted mostly on frogs and snakes, they loved sugar. It was a trick among many people to leave cookies and snacks throughout the houses to entice the tricksters into being good, although most of the time, this trick did not work. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I know this is a very long video and probably the longest one I have ever created so far. I would just like to thank you for the support and for taking the time out of the holiday season to watch my content. I really hope that the Christmas holiday goes well for you. Until the next video, Merry Christmas to all, and to all, a good night.